All right, so I just saw an interview with Pete Hoekstra, and the amount of gaslighting is ridiculous. And honestly, my head hurts from the level of gaslighting he managed to squeeze into every sentence. With Trump now on Canadian soil, I couldn't help but notice Pete Hoekstra looked like a puppy seeing his owner walk through the door. The only problem? When Trump leaves, we're still stuck with Pete. Before we dive in, I wanted to highlight some of Canada's incredible parks. Today's background is Gander International Airport, a place with deep ties to the US after 9/11. I've been thinking about doing a video on Gander and what that community did for stranded Americans. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments. Now, let's break down the nonsense that just came out of Pete's mouth.
Pete Hoekstra is the United States Ambassador to Canada, and he joins me now in the studio. Ambassador, it's good to meet you. Thanks for coming in today, sir.
It's good to be here. Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Okay, there is a promise and a signal of big capital spending down the road, certainly from the Prime Minister, but also a signal that they want to move some of that capital away from your country, with Mark Carney saying today that Canada should no longer send 3/4 of our defense capital spending to America. They want to manufacture more in Canada. They're looking at deeper integration with Europe. On this, I mean, what do you make of this deliberate moving away from the United States on that?
Well, we'll see if it's deliberate or not. America will compete for every defense dollar that Canada is spending. We expect that we will bring you the best value, the best product, and when the Canadian government and procurement office looks at it and says, that's a pretty good deal from America. I think that's kind of like what we did with the F-35s. We put together American industry along with other folks, put together a deal that a lot of countries couldn't refuse. Why? A modest investment at the beginning of the program and billions of dollars worth of contracts as the program continues to mature and as we build aircraft and sell them to countries around the world.
Is it just me, or is Pete giving off serious used car salesman energy? No offense if any of you actually sell cars. This isn't about you. This is about someone trying to sell us something we're no longer buying. Pete's completely ignoring the fact that Canada, and frankly most of the world, has been insulted, dismissed, and pushed around by the US. And here's the thing, we control where we spend. You could have the best pitch, the best deal, the best packaging, but if your government is run by a bunch of pricks, I'm not interested. I'll take my money somewhere else. This goes for consumer products as well. Pete keeps talking about the past. Sure, maybe it worked before, but everything changed on January 20th, 2025. And pretending otherwise just makes the whole act even more arrogant.
But it sounds like the Prime Minister is intent on reducing the integration or slowing the integration, becoming more self-reliant domestically and more engaged with Europe and away from the United States.
Like I said, we'll compete for every dollar. We build fantastic products. We're a tough competitor. A lot of our stuff is interchangeable and interoperable with our friends to the north. There's a cost to doing that, but that's a decision the Prime Minister and the Canadian government will make. All I can say is that we want to do business with Canada. We will compete for that business, and ultimately Canada will make the decision as to what products they will buy.
Okay, I want to play a clip if I can, Ambassador. This is something that the Prime Minister said today, sort of about U.S. global dominance. In his view, the implication from it is that it could be a thing of the past, or at least that's how he's viewing it and adjusting to a post-U.S. dominant world. Just have a listen to this.
With the fall of the Berlin Wall, the United States became the global hegemon. Its gravitational pull on Canada, always strong, became virtually irresistible. But now, the United States is beginning to monetize its hegemony, charging for access to its markets and reducing its relative contribution to our collective security.
I wonder what your reaction is to that.
It's kind of like reducing its relative contribution to our United security. Yeah, absolutely. All right. For years, I mean, when I was in the Netherlands, the ambassador there in 1918 to 21, I think there were 8 or 9 NATO countries that were meeting a commitment of paying 2%. You bet. We demand, the president demanded, encouraged other countries to meet their NATO commitment, saying, the commitment is there to keep Europe safe. And a lot of countries didn't commit. And so, yeah, we were asking our allies to step up because The president has to go home to, American voters, and it's a pretty hard question when, someone asks, Mr. President, America's paying significantly more than 2% for NATO, but yet we have 20-some countries who aren't even close to 2%. Please justify and explain that to us. And it's kind of like, that's hard to explain. Why is America paying for the security of those 24, 23 countries that aren't paying for NATO? Doesn't make any sense, and the president says no.
That argument makes about as much sense as asking Kim's convenience store to compete with Walmart globally. How the hell is a smaller country supposed to match the output of a global superpower? Yes, there's a 2% target, and countries should work toward it. No argument there. But let's not ignore reality. Mark Carney has already committed more. And when we talk about commitments, we need to factor in size, GDP, and what each country can realistically contribute. Scale matters.
From you in your interview with the Globe and Mail, I believe, about the direct contact between Mr. Carney and Mr. Trump happening at some frequency. Is it moving in the right direction, do you think, or how would you characterize the tone and tenor of things right now?
Well, I mean, I think the tone and tenor is, again, observing from the outside, not being in those meetings. Mm-hmm. The announcement today by the Prime Minister that Canada is moving to 2% is a clear indication that things are moving in the right direction. The decision by the Prime Minister in Alberta, not a huge decision in the scope of the total economic framework, but saying, hey, we're going to put American alcohol back on our shelves. Our citizens, they will make the decision as to whether they're going to buy American alcohol or not. Those are two things that I think are indicating that some are seeing real progress or anticipating real progress in the discussions between the U.S. and Canada.
Of course, you see U.S. alcohol going back on the shelves as progress because it benefits your businesses. But a large number of Canadians don't agree. And based on what we're seeing in the comments, plenty of Albertans are still choosing to boycott U.S. alcohol altogether and go against their premier. I covered this in more depth in a separate video. If you want to dive into that, it's linked in the top right corner of your screen.
But I just wonder where you think the relations are because of all of this. Like, there's at least 700 people in the steel sector that have lost their jobs because of the tariffs, and the industry here warns thousands more. I mean, Algoma Steel sends more than 50% of its product into the United States, and it's now sort of been hit with a tariff of 50% because of a national security threat. And I'm not sure how the people in industry of Sault Ste. Marie constitute a national security threat to the United States.
The security threat is we need to have the ability to produce certain products and have access to those products inside the United States and those types of things. That's what the president promised us. You talk about the 700 people, and we feel for that. Anybody going through either a temporary or potentially a permanent layoff, of course, there's a tension that you feel. But I think many of your citizens have probably driven through parts of the Midwest that they call the Rust Belt. Okay, the Rust Belt, which is, not only individual factories, but communities devastated because Americans lost their job. So the president is committed to bringing prosperity back to those types of communities and those families who many people in the U.S. believe were left behind.
I find it pretty damn ironic that Pete said Trump is trying to fix a problem when he's the one who created it. Jobs are being lost on both sides of the border, and they wouldn't be if he hadn't messed with something that wasn't broken in the first place. And then there's the tariff circus. One moment is 50%, then while you're watching a movie, it jumps to 100%, and by the time you get home, it's back down to 75%. This isn't policy, it's chaos. And let's be clear, that chaos isn't coming from Canada. It's coming from one guy, and we all know who that is.
But what was Canada's role in that? This is what I try to understand, because you grew up in Michigan, right? The auto agreements have inflicted prosperity on Michigan, on Windsor, on southwestern Ontario, and now thousands of jobs have been lost in those sectors because of this disruption, right? Like, this is not making anyone better off, at least at this stage of it.
At this stage, I think that's the key thing, and it's the word that you used, disruption. Absolutely, it is disruption. This is why I believe that both governments and both teams are working towards getting to an agreement, because I believe the future for both countries can be stronger and better once we get past this disruption.
But if you listen to the President, Ambassador, it sounds like for him to be satisfied, Canada must lose in this relationship. The auto jobs must move to the United States. It's a zero-sum game here where he says, we don't need this from Canada, we don't need that from Canada, we don't think you should be making cars. It sounds like, almost like a hostile takeover of a core sustaining sector for our biggest province.
No, I don't think that, I wouldn't agree with that analysis. I think that there is clearly a win-win possibility for us on a number of different issues. Whether it is on defense, working together, we will be stronger in keeping our country safe and secure. The Golden Dome, whether it is on energy, whether it is on critical minerals. Canada, I think everybody recognizes, has a lot to offer. And that this partnership, like I said before, this partnership can be stronger, and that when America is stronger and we prosper, my guess is that Canada will be stronger and they will prosper. When America is safer and more secure, I think you'll see the same kind of benefits in Canada. We're united by a 4,800-mile border. We share a lot of other things. We've got great relationships. No, I think at the end of this day, it's not a zero-sum game. I think that a strong North America, united on a lot of these issues, will see significant more prosperity than where we are today.
Well,
There's one thing I know, and I'm pretty sure most of you will agree. There's never a we when it comes to Donald Trump. Pete keeps saying we can prosper together, build a stronger North America, and whatever other scripted crap he's been told to say. But Trump doesn't think about anyone but himself. And in any deal with him, who always gets screwed? Canada, Europe, Australia, take your pick. It's never in our favor. So sorry, Pete, I'm not buying a word of it.
I guess the phrase win-win is what I look at. You want Canada to join continental defense with Golden Dome, buy military, get to the NATO 2%. Access to the critical minerals would obviously benefit, the people who produce those minerals in Canada. But it sounds like you want to have access to natural resources and have us be a customer, but the manufacturing component you want moved south of our border to the United States. This is what I take from the president. So how am I misunderstanding that? Because when I was in the Oval Office, when he met with Prime Minister Carney, the tone was very good. The mood was very good. But the words were still very aggressive in terms of him wanting to expropriate some of our economic success.
And I've heard fairly aggressive terms from Canadians coming back at the U.S. saying we're going to develop other customers, we're going to diversify, we're not going to buy as much.
By necessity, isn't it? Because we're living up to a trade agreement this president signed, and now here we are seeking something else, and there's real doubts about whether that would even be lived up to.
Well said, because it really is out of necessity. The US has pushed Canada and the rest of the world into a corner with these drastic measures. So of course we're looking at a plan B. That's not aggression, Pete. It's survival. Your claim that Canada has been acting aggressive is complete bullshit. We're reacting to the hostility your boss started. It's like being punched over and over by a bully, and the second you swing back, the bully cries foul. Come on, Pete, drop the act.
For the course of whatever it is.
American, we will live up. I mean, for the 50 years or 75 years of NATO, all right, there's been one country that has consistently been supporting NATO. That happens to be the United States of America. We are a reliable ally, a trusted ally, and we're okay. But
Did you catch that? He paused, thought about it, and the best he could come up with was, "We're okay." That's the kind of answer you give when you've got nothing left to say. And we've heard that same empty line from his boss too many times. The nonsense Trump spits out gets recycled word for word by Pete. Sorry, just venting here, but I'm not buying the used car salesman pitch. Not today.
Let's wait and see what an agreement looks like, okay? There's a lot of rhetoric potentially on both sides, but let's see exactly when there's an agreement. I'll come back and we'll talk to you about it again, okay?
No, look,
we will both be saying, oh, man, I maybe didn't anticipate this. This actually could be pretty good for both countries.
Skepticism, can't you, Ambassador, on this side of the border? Because, you know, the 51st state stuff, and I know you said that that was gone away, but then the president put it out on social media. If you join, you get Golden Dome for free.
Let's get it clarified. I said it was away unless the president or Carney decided to bring it up. And coincidentally, I think you could argue, you could make a credible case that as the president brought it up, maybe the Canadians were bringing it up, and maybe the media was bringing it up at the same time. It wasn't just the President of the United States with his tweet. It was 36 hours of nonstop media coverage and Canadians talking about, this is proving our sovereignty. And it's kind of like you're thumping the president in the chest for 36 hours, and you shouldn't be, but you know.
If this isn't a textbook case of gaslighting, I don't know what is. Pete's out here trying to spin the narrative that the 51st state rhetoric is coming from both sides. Really, it's the same old story. A bully keeps landing punches, we finally swing back, and suddenly we're the problem? Now we're being blamed for talking about becoming the 51st state? Come on. Pete, you're a fucking joke.
Every time he does this, it moves markets, it moves money, like it costs jobs. I mean, you know, these sectors are either sitting on money or downsizing their capacity because of they're afraid.
We're going through a transition. Okay, $2 trillion deficits on an annual basis. We're not sustainable for the United States of America. The president is acting in the interest of the American people by addressing our fiscal house and putting that in order. Millions of people coming across our border, undocumented, untracked, not even knowing it was not sustainable. And so, yes, the president is tackling that issue. Are any of these, as your prime minister has called it, are any of these transformational issues easy to deal with? No, they are difficult. But once we get through this transition period, the expectation is, and the expectation, you've got some issues here in Canada that the Prime Minister wants to address that are going to be tough to deal with, but the hope and the expectation is that when we're done transforming, much of our sector, that the Canadians are done transforming much of their sector, you will have two countries in the G7 that are in a race and in a competition as to which one will have the highest growth rate. And I couldn't think of a better competition to have in 2025 at the end of the year in 2026 than the U.S. and the Canada competing. Wait a minute, I've got the fastest growing economy. No, you do.
No, I don't buy into this idea that it's a race. It should be about cooperation, about helping each other grow, not undercutting allies just to get ahead. That kind of thinking isn't leadership, it's desperation. If you lie, cheat, and walk over everyone to boost yourself, don't be surprised when no one wants to work with you. You might think you're winning, but eventually you're just running alone, with no trade partners and no trust. Now, Pete did say one thing that's actually true. Canada, and a lot of the world, is changing. And he's right. We are transforming, just not in the way he thinks. We're moving away from relying on the US, because when all you offer is threats and pressure, don't expect stronger relationships. Expect distance. As for Pete himself, yeah, we're stuck with him. And I genuinely feel for the Netherlands, because they had to deal with him last time. But here we are, and I'll keep calling him out on his BS every time he opens his mouth and tries to spin reality. That's it for today's video. I'm not a policy expert, and I'm not pretending to be. I'm just a regular Canadian, like most of you watching. But if this hit home, a like and subscribe goes a long way to get the message out. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.